welcome. All right. We started last week this new series talking about having margin in our lives. And we all need to have some breathing room. We all need some space, right? We all need that margin in our life. And we can't always be living at our limit or we fall off the edge. Eventually, the limit breaks. The living life with margin is having that space between our current pace and our limits. Having that buffer zone, if you will. Evidence you have margin in your life might be something like, you're arriving with spare time, not feeling rushed, having time between appointments, having money left over at the end of the month. Some of you are like, oh man, that'd be a dream, that'd be amazing. Exactly, right? That's an evidence of margin. You have a bit extra, hitting an emotional bump and being able to handle it because you're not completely at your limit where you're just going to fall off the edge. If one more person fails me, if one more person hurts me, I'm done. Having that, you can handle it. You've got a bit of cushion there. Working hard but having reserves for your family. You're still getting home with enough to give out to your family. You're not completely toasted. So that's what we're talking about. We're talking about living with margin. And I think that's a dream we would all love. We'd all go, I don't think there's a single person in this room that go, no, I don't want margin in my life. We would love it. But how do we get there? How do we have that in this demanding world? Well, there's biblical principles we're going to be looking at. Looked at some last week. We're talking about rest and how God instituted certain things. And we're going to look at 3 other areas as we go forward. But how many people panic when they see this picture? Any panickers in the room? You look at this, you're like, yeah. We've got some organisers who want to go, how do you feel comfortable with this? Like, yeah, it's like my shit. It's all good. Yeah, all right, cool. We've got some people in the room. Got a few different things. Well, we spoke about clutter last week. And just like there's a limit to clutter in people's homes, and some people can pack in a lot, right? Especially if you watch those TV shows where they help those people that have that hoarding issue. Like, they can pack in a lot. But there's eventually a limit. There's also a limit to the clutter in our lives too. Somewhere there's a breaking point. It's not fun to watch a married couple get to the end of their emotional reserves, or a friend who's living on the edge financially and goes into bankruptcy. There's nothing enjoyable about a schedule with no margin of error, where you don't enjoy anything because you're worried about the next thing. No, I don't have time to talk. I've got to go to the next thing. There's no time. There's no margin. Too much stuff in the closet, spare room, or back shed. That's one thing, right? But too much stuff in schedules and finances is something else. And we spoke about how fear is a main driver of us having no margin. Living right at our limits. The fear of missing out, the fear of falling behind, and the fear of not mattering or lacking significance. And how that is a big push to us living to our limits. No, I've got to work hard. I've got to do this. Otherwise, this will happen. I'll fall behind. Or I won't matter. I won't be noticed. And how that often pushes us to our limit and robs us of having any margin. Having breathing room, having a margin in your life is part of God's design and is therefore part of his plan for you. And we looked at that last week. We looked at some scriptural examples of how God planned that for you, to have margin. We looked at how God instituted some rules for the nation of Israel as well. And one was having a day off. In a world where there was always something else to do, there's always something that needed to be done, they were just not to do it. They would have rest. And I know some of you that freaks you out, but there's jobs to be done. Rest. And God instituted that on purpose because he knew that we would not stop if at least certain people, certain personality types certainly wouldn't stop. And so he instituted that so we would rest. These next 3 weeks, we're going to look and focus on 3 other areas in our life that we need margin. Time, finances, and with our family, or close relationships. Time is one thing that we all have the same amount of in a day, right? There's not a single one of us here that gets an extra minute. There is exactly 1,440 minutes in a day. You don't get an extra one. There's no cheat to give you more time. We all have the exact same amount of time. So if we can't create more time, then we have to be wiser with how we use it. Margin in our schedules begins by recognizing that time is a limited and valuable asset. And Moses wrote a psalm that I think gives us great principles for how each of us and how we can kind of help us declutter our time, how we can help us have a right focus on how to deal with time. So if you brought your Bibles, go ahead and turn to the book of Psalm, or the book of Psalms, and Psalm 90. 90. Go ahead and turn to Psalm 90. I'll have it on the screen as well. But I want you to notice as we read as we read through our main first point here, your time is a gift from God, and it is limited. I think we're all like, yeah, we get that. But Moses gives us some principles about that, and then how to move on and how to make it more impactful. So we'll start with Psalm 90, the first 6 verses, and then we'll continue reading a little bit later. But first thing is verses 1 to 6 of Psalm 90. Moses wrote this. He said, Lord, you have been our dwelling place in all generations. Before the mountains were brought forth, or you had formed the earth and the world, even from everlasting to everlasting, you are God. You return man to the dust and say, return, you children of men. For 1,000 years in your sight are but as yesterday when it is past, or as a night watch in the nighttime. You carry them away as with a flood. They are as a dream. Like renewed grass in the morning. In the morning it flourishes and grows, and in the evening it fades and withers. It's true about my lawn. What an encouraging psalm. Hey everyone, life is short and quick. It's like my grass, right? It's dead by the time spring comes around. Basically, alive in winter, dead in spring before even the summer even hits. It's so short. He says it's like a night shift. Any night shift workers here? It's like one shift, bang, that's a life. He says 1,000 years is like yesterday. It's so quick, it's so short. And the point of this is that, not that God doesn't care, like we're just a blip and like you're like nothing to God. You're like 5 minutes. No, that's not the point. That's not what he's saying here. Rather, it's that we are not around that long. We have limited time. Continue on from verse 10. Drop down to verse 10. He says, the years of our life are 70, and if by reason of strength, 80. Yet their length is toil and sorrow, for they soon end. And we fly away. Who knows the power of your anger, or your wrath according to your fear? So teach us to number our days, that we may apply our hearts to wisdom. It says life's short. 70, maybe 80 years is the average lifespan. Time is limited. We're not guaranteed any particular amount of years on this life. I think the average now is getting closer to 80, but we're not guaranteed that 80. I have a friend, good friend, who I went to Bible college with. He's like 5 years older than me. He's in the ministry. He's just about to take a new pastorate. And like the first week of January, we just had a new year. He took a bunch of young adults abseiling, and he was a pro at this. He was a professional, he was a competitive rock climber. Abseiling down a cliff, something happened, he's fall, he's his head, he's dead. Just like that. And you go, whoa. And this is not like this guy was just some guy without purpose, and you ask the questions, why, how, why did it have to happen? And he left 3 teenage boys without a father and his wife now single mothering, and you go, why, how? Because life is like that. We're not guaranteed tomorrow. We're not guaranteed 80 years. We're not guaranteed whatever. But even then, average lifespan, it's limited. There's an expiry date. Verse 11, he says, who knows the power of your anger or your wrath according to your fear? Without going through a Hebrew grammar lesson to help understand what the average Jew would understand in reading this in Hebrew, let me just give you the idea he's portraying, which is if we could see God as he is, the fear of God, the reverence and respect of really seeing who God is, we would give him that reverence and honor he is due. Who knows these things, he says? Who knows them? If we truly knew what God was like, we would give him that honor, the reverence that he was due. But we can't. So we must be taught, right? And Moses says in verse 12, teach us to number our days. Teach. This doesn't come naturally. We're not born with this instant knowledge of what our time is. We tend to live as if we have endless days. You look at a teenager. They think they have all the time in the world. do whatever I want. That's all right. It doesn't matter. Don't really think about the end result of the decisions, right? What do we do when we have something that we think we have an endless supply of? We don't value it, do we? We waste it. You think about those kids we read in the paper whose parents are billionaires and they just waste money. I'll go trash a Lambo around the corner. That's all right. Dad'll pay for a new one. They waste it. And we're like, oh, what we could do with that money. Oh, what they've done. What we could do, we could use that for because we have a limited supply. People who think they've got endless supply waste it. Remembering our time is limited helps provide us with wisdom to know how to spend our limited time. As we see here, because limited things are more valuable. When you think about a housing market and what happened there, what happened with our housing market when things got tight, when the rental, instead of having like 6-7% available houses, it went to like under 1%, what happened? Price went up. Went from like $400 a week to $750 a week. People were throwing money to get a place because it was limited. There's the reasons why things like diamonds and gold are so valuable. They're limited. And we need to see the value of our time. And look what Moses said. He says, teach us the number of our days so we may apply our hearts to wisdom. When we realize the limited time we have, how important and valuable time a resource is, it will give us wisdom in how to use that. We'll apply it wisely. So we need to have that. We need to gain wisdom as a result when we number our days and we realize that it has value because it's limited and we spend it on what matters most. Because there's a constant demand for our time. The constant demand. People, things, the world around us, our job, our family, everyone demands our time. Somebody is going to control your time. Somebody's going to control your time. When you recognize, this is something that I already said before, you recognize the limited resource, you're going to be careful with it. But somebody's going to control your time. Why not the one who gave it to you? Why not the one who cares for you? Why not the one who's great and mighty plans for you? Why not the one who knows what the future brings and what you're going to need? Why not let him be the one who controls your time rather scheduled that in there. We must do our best to number our days, to redeem the time we have. Actually, I've got a picture of the schedule. You probably can't see any of it. But like I've gone in there and I've tried all these little white spaces, never had before. Now I've got little white spaces where I'm like, oh, okay, I can, that's free. Well, I schedule things in there. I make sure the jobs are done, the things that happen. I even put like gym time in there. I do the things that I need to do so I can get them done. I schedule family time in. I schedule time with my wife. I schedule that time in so I know that nothing else can rob that time as well. So if you ask to meet with me on Friday night, sorry, got an appointment. That's my family time. That's my family fun night. I do something cool with my kids. You know, that's what I've locked in there. You know, I'm not available at that time. You know, and these are things that I go with. That's how I can get things done. That's how I can redeem my time. We've got to do our best to number our days, to redeem the time we have. And as a result, we'll find we have more margin. We'll have more time than we realize. We actually have a bit of cushion here. We actually have a bit of space in my life. There's a breathing room. I don't feel panicked anymore. And I encourage you to actually schedule in downtime so it doesn't get taken up by something else. Schedule in family time. And when someone asks if you're available, say, no, I already have an appointment. Protect it. It's important. Redeem it. It's a limited resource. It's valuable. Go home, think about your schedule, maybe write it down, then ask these 4 questions that we had. And as a daily habit, I recommend you pray that God continues to teach you to number your days so that you may gain a heart of wisdom, as the Psalm said. Help me realize this time is a limited resource, and I want to use it the best way I can. God, give me your wisdom in how to do that. When I take my kids to the toy store and give them some money to buy something, they take so long. Why? I mean, they see something they like straight away, because that's what kids do. They want everything. But they'll look at that and I'm like, no, this is what you've got to spend. They have a limited resource. They'll look at a toy. They'll walk around. They might even have it under their arm, but they'll see something else they like, and they'll grab that. I'm like, oh, I don't know which one I want. You know, take them both, whatever. Walk around. And eventually, after a long, long period of time has gone by, when you're like, just pick one, they will eventually come to a decision. Why do they take so long? Because they have a limited resource. They only got $10 or $20, whatever it is. They've got a limited resource. They want to get their best value out of it. They're careful. They want to get the most of their limited resource. When you have a limited resource, you're careful with it. And that's what we need to be with our time. And as we are, we'll start to have that margin that perhaps we don't have in our lives right now, that pressure, that living at the limit. All of a sudden we start to realize, I can actually take that on. I've got some spare time. I can actually do that thing I've always wanted to do. I can actually spend time in prayer. I don't have to rush off to work straight away. I've got that margin. Help us to number our days, Lord, so you may have that. Apply our hearts to wisdom, that we may have that wisdom and that ability to use our time as that valuable asset, to use it wisely, to spend that time the way God would best want us to spend that time, in the most valuable way we can. Let's all stand together. As we go, I want you to think about this week, how can I declutter my schedule? How can I remove, decrease, increase those questions? How can I best use that time? And as we think about it, I think you'll find you'll have more of it. Not because you get more in a day, you all get the same amount, but you'll have used it wiser, that you'll have that ability in your life, that little bit of cushion, that little bit of margin. Dear God, I thank you so much for each and every one here. And you love and value each and every one here. And God, your plans are not for us to live frantic, worried, stressed lives. You want us to live lives of peace. And as we spoke about last week, peace over progress. Peace is more important than progress. When it comes to our work, when it comes to these performances that we think we have to live up to, peace is what your heart is for us. Peace not to worry, but to trust you. Peace not to be living at our limits where it's all going to fall apart. I pray, Lord, time, which is so important, that each of us only have a limited amount with. We all have the same amount. No one gets more than anyone else. No, there's no cheat codes when it comes to time. Help us, Lord, to realize the importance of that resource, to number our days wisely. You give us the wisdom to do that, God, so that we can live not feeling like we have to live the schedule, but that we realize that as we schedule in the things that are important, as we give them the importance and the value that in the right order, I think we'll find we have margin. We have some breathing room, which we need so much in our lives. I pray you guide us to this. Thank you, God. Amen.